All right, so today we are diving deep into Indian telecom.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, you might be thinking, wait, telecom? Is that really deep dive worthy? But trust me, this is way more exciting than setting up your Wi-Fi router.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We're talking about Indus Towers, the company that basically holds up India's booming mobile network.
They're the backbone, you could say.
Exactly.
They own and operate those massive cell towers that you see all over India.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you make a call, send a text, or binge watch your favorite show on your phone, you're relying on those towers.
It's true, and we've got their latest earnings call transcript fresh off the press.
Ooh, nice.
We're going to unpack it all together today.
All right.
We'll understand how Indus Towers is doing right now, what's
Okay.
happening in the whole telecom industry over there, and what the future might hold. Ready to get our hands dirty with some data?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first, how is Indus Towers actually doing, like, business-wise?
Well, they're in the middle of a serious growth spurt.
Yeah.
They just had a really strong quarter.
Revenue is climbing.
I like the sound of that.
A lot of that has to do with 5G rolling out in India.
Okay, so 5G, obviously huge here in the U.S.
Right.
Is it a big deal in India, too?
Massive.
Right.
Just imagine, India has over 1 billion mobile phone users.
Wow.
And many of them are jumping from older 2G and 3G networks straight to 5G.
Oh.
So the demand for data is absolutely exploding.
And that's where Indus Towers comes in.
Right.
Because you need a ton of infrastructure to support all that data flying around.
Right. And Indus is meeting that demand head on.
Okay.
This past quarter, they added thousands of new towers and tenancies,
Oh, wow.
which basically means more telecom companies are renting space on their towers.
So they're adding new towers, and they're filling up the towers with tenants?
Yes.
Sounds like a pretty good recipe for success.
It is, but it's not all smooth sailing.
Oh.
They did face some challenges this quarter, mostly due to some crazy weather.
Look what?
We're talking heavy rains, floods, even landslides in some parts of India. Yeah, I remember reading about those floods.
Yeah.
Pretty scary stuff, I'd imagine, that would cause some major disruptions for a company that relies on physical infrastructure.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But incredibly, Indus Towers managed to keep their network running with 99.96% uptime across the entire country.
Hold on, 99.96% uptime during massive floods and landslides. That's incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is a testament to their operational resilience and the dedication of their field teams.
Yeah.
They clearly know how important it is to keep India connected no matter what.
That's amazing.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so business is booming. They're weathering the storms. Literally, what's the bigger picture look like for the entire Indian telecom sector? Why should we even care about what's happening over there?
Well, India's mobile market is one of the fastest growing in the world.
Okay.
Think about it. They have a massive population, rapidly increasing smartphone adoption,
Right.
and data consumption is through the roof.
So they basically have all the ingredients for a telecom revolution.
Absolutely. And it's not just about quantity, it's also about the speed of change.
Okay.
We're talking about hundreds of millions of people leaping from older technology straight to 4G and 5G.
Wow.
That's a huge leap forward, and it's creating a ton of opportunities for companies like Indus Towers.
So just to be clear, the average Indian mobile user is consuming more data than people in developed countries like the U.S.
It's not quite at that level yet,
Right.
but it's getting there quickly.
Why?
The average Indian user now consumes 26 GB hours of data per month,
Oh,
and that's a 17% jump from just a year ago.
really?
To put that into perspective, think about how much you rely on your phone for everything.
Yeah.
Now imagine that usage multiplying by a factor of 10.
Wow. That's insane. It seems like every time we talk about India, the numbers are just mind-boggling.
Yep.
But I have to ask, what does all this growth and excitement mean for Indus Towers' future?
Well, the outlook is generally pretty bright.
Okay. Right.
They're expecting continued growth, although maybe not at the insane pace of the past year. But there are a few things on the horizon that could really shake things up.
Ooh, I like a little bit of drama.
You're right.
Lay it on me. What are we talking about?
First off, there's Vodafone Idea.
Yep.
They're one of the biggest telecom players in India,
Right.
and they just secured a major investment to expand their network.
Okay.
This is huge news for Indus Towers,
How so?
because they're expecting a wave of new tenancies from Vodafone Idea as they build out their infrastructure.
More tenants, more revenue. That sounds like a win for Indus Towers.
It is, and it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
They're expecting these new tenancies to come from all the major players,
Okay.
not just their biggest customer.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're diversifying their client base.
Exactly. But there are some potential risks we need to talk about as well.
I knew there had to be a catch. What kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, two of their biggest customers, Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel, are starting to slow down their spending.
Oh, interesting.
This is something to watch closely because these companies are massive players in the Indian telecom scene.
So if they tighten their purse strings, that could have a ripple effect on Indus Towers' growth plans.
Exactly. And then there's this whole issue of a goods and services tax notice that Indus Towers recently received.
Wait, a GST notice? What's that all about?
It's a bit complicated, but essentially it's a potential liability related to how they're taxed on their infrastructure assets.
Okay.
Now, Indus Towers is saying that they don't think it's a big deal right now, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay, so we've got potential slowdown in spending from big customers and this looming tax issue. That sounds like a lot to juggle.
It does, but here's the interesting thing.
What's that?
Despite all of this, Indus Towers is still laser focused on keeping their shareholders happy.
Okay.
They recently completed a stock buyback program, which basically means they bought back some of their own shares.
And what does that tell us?
Well, it shows that even with potential risks, they're confident enough in their business to return cash to investors.
Okay.
And as a side effect, it actually bumped up Bharti Airtel's ownership stake in Indus Towers to over 50%.
Hold on, Bharti Airtel, as in one of the major customers who might be slowing down spending. That's fascinating.
It is. We've got this potential tension between Bharti Airtel potentially spending less on infrastructure and at the same time increasing their ownership in the company that provides that infrastructure.
Right.
It's a bit of a puzzle.
It's like a game of chess with some seriously high stakes.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface of what's happening in the Indian telecom world.
Wow. So much to think about already.
I know, right?
So we just left off talking about some big players in the Indian telecom space, like Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel.
Right.
Maybe putting the brakes on their spending a little bit.
Yeah.
That seems like it could be a red flag in a market as competitive as India's, right?
It definitely raises some eyebrows. But remember, even if those giants slow down a little, we're still talking about a country where millions of people are getting online for the very first time.
So it's less like a shrinking pie and more like everyone jostling for position as the pie keeps growing.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And this is where Indus Towers' strategy really shines.
Okay.
They're not betting on just one or two big players.
Right.
They've got relationships with all the major telecom companies.
So they're spreading the risk, like a well-diversified investment portfolio.
Precisely.
Right.
And this approach is especially important because technology never stands still.
Right.
We've talked about 5G.
Yeah.
But there are other exciting developments that could totally change the game.
Oh, do tell. What's on the horizon?
Think smaller, more targeted solutions.
Okay.
Things like small cells, which are basically mini cell towers designed for super dense urban areas.
Okay.
Or in-building solutions that boost connectivity inside large structures.
Okay, so basically bringing the network closer to the people in crowded places.
Right.
I can see how that would be crucial in a place like Mumbai.
Absolutely.
But how does this impact a company like Indus Towers, which has built its empire on those giant traditional towers?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
They can't just sit back and watch as the market shifts. They
No.
have to evolve alongside these new technologies.
So are they up for the challenge, or are they destined to become the dinosaurs of the telecom world?
Well, from what we're seeing, they're taking some positive steps.
Okay.
They're investing in renewable energy,
Okay.
streamlining their operations, and exploring those new technologies we talked about.
So they're not just burying their heads in the sand.
Definitely not. And remember how they handled those floods?
Yeah, that was amazing.
That kind of resilience suggests they can adapt to change.
Okay.
But, let's be real, these new technologies require serious investment.
Right. And that's where the slowdown in spending from their big customers could actually work in their favor, wouldn't it?
You're catching on.
Okay.
It's like being forced to diet. It's not always fun, but it can make you healthier in the long run.
So this potential slowdown could force them to become more efficient and innovative.
Yeah.
Kind of a blessing in disguise.
Exactly. It's pushing them to rethink their business model and find new ways to grow.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
It's not just about building taller towers anymore.
Right.
It's about navigating a complex web of technological shifts,
Yeah.
competitive pressures, and changing market dynamics.
You got it.
Yeah.
And speaking of changing dynamics, there's one massive development we haven't fully explored yet.
Oh, what's that?
The Vodafone Idea merger?
Ah, yes, the elephant in the room.
Exactly.
We've been dancing around it, but it's time to tackle it head on.
Let's do it.
Okay, break it down for me. What are the implications for Indus Towers?
Well, on the surface, it seems like good news, right?
Okay.
2 major customers joining forces, potentially expanding their network even further,
Yeah.
needing more tower space.
More tenants, more revenue, right. But I'm sensing there's a but coming.
There always is.
Okay.
The big but here is that mergers often lead to less competition.
Right.
And less competition usually means slower growth.
So fewer companies vying for market share.
Yeah.
Less urgency to expand aggressively.
Right.
And potentially less need for new towers.
That's the concern. It's like going from a 100-meter sprint to a marathon.
Okay.
The pace might slow down even if the overall distance is longer.
Okay, so we've got this short-term boost from the merger.
Right.
But long-term things could get a bit murky.
Yeah.
How does Indus Towers prepare for that kind of uncertainty?
That's what makes this such a fascinating case study.
Yeah.
They have to strike a very delicate balance.
Okay.
They need to capitalize on the immediate opportunities from the merger, while simultaneously preparing for a future where demand for traditional towers might not be as strong.
So how do they do that? What's the game plan?
It's all about being agile and adaptable.
Okay.
They need to invest in new technologies, right? Diversify their client base even further.
Yeah.
And maybe even consider entirely new business models.
So it's not just about being the biggest anymore. It's about being the smartest, most innovative player in the game.
Exactly. And remember, this isn't just about Indus Towers.
Okay.
Their story is a reflection of what's happening in the entire Indian tech ecosystem.
Right.
Rapid growth, fierce competition, and the constant need to adapt to stay ahead of the curve.
Wow, it's amazing how a deep dive into one company can give us such a broad perspective on a whole country's technological evolution.
It really is.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back,
We are.
ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Indus Towers.
Yeah.
We talked about their stellar performance, the booming Indian telecom market,
Right.
the risks on the horizon,
Yeah.
and of course that game-changing Vodafone Idea merger.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has.
You know, it's easy to get lost in all the data and financial jargon.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is really a human story.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, think about it. Indus Towers is providing the infrastructure that connects over 1 billion people.
Right.
Every time someone in India makes a call to a loved one, shares a photo online,
Yeah.
or accesses information that changes their life, it's happening because of the network that companies like Indus Towers make possible.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It is easy to forget that behind all the numbers and business deals, there are real people whose lives are being impacted.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that the decisions these companies make have a ripple effect that extends far beyond the boardroom.
Yeah, okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways you want our listener to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, the Indian telecom sector is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, sure.
It's dynamic, it's competitive, and it's growing at an incredible pace.
It's like the Wild West of the tech world.
Exactly, and Indus Towers is right in the heart of it.
Yeah.
They're a major player with a solid track record, but they're also facing some serious challenges.
Like those potential spending cuts from their big customers?
Right.
And that lingering GST notice.
Exactly, and then there's the big question mark hanging over the Vodafone Idea merger.
Yeah.
Will it ultimately benefit Indus Towers or create more hurdles in the long run?
So many questions, so few crystal balls. But hey, that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating, right?
It does, and that's why we want to leave our listener with a few final thoughts to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked about how Indus Towers needs to adapt and evolve to stay ahead of the curve.
Right.
But here's the real challenge. Can they do that while still balancing the needs of their investors, their customers, and the millions of people who rely on their infrastructure?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's like walking a tightrope between short-term gains and long-term sustainability.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide whether we think they're up for the challenge.
It is.
Are they going to be the company that brings India into a new era of connectivity?
Right.
Or will they become another cautionary tale of a company that failed to adapt to a changing world?
That's the question.
So much to think about. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how this story unfolds.
Indeed. But one thing's for sure, the future of Indian telecom is going to be anything but boring.
Well said. Thanks for taking us on this incredible deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I feel like I've learned so much about India, technology,
Yeah.
and the delicate balance between opportunity and risk.
Absolutely.
And to our listener, thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep diving deep.